My name is Thomas, and I turned 65 just 3 weeks ago. I'd worked for the same logistics company for 42 years. Started out as a junior dispatcher with no degree, just grit and a willingness to take every night shift they threw at me. Over the years, I climbed, not fast, not with fanfare, but steadily. I became regional manager by my 50s and helped keep the company afloat through the 2008 crash, multiple leadership changes, and a pandemic. I never craved praise. I just wanted to build something reliable, something that would last. Provide for my family. Be a stable man in a world that isn't. My retirement party was supposed to be a celebration of that. A goodbye, a thank you, a passing of the torch. But that night became something else entirely. A mirror I didn't want held up to my face. My wife, Denise, and I have been married for 38 years. We met when I was 27, and she's been my partner through thick and thin. Or so I thought. We raised 2 kids. Our son, Brandon, who's now 34, and our daughter, Cassie, who just turned 30. They were both there that night. Friends, colleagues, old co-workers. Even the CEO, bless his heart, showed up to the hall the company rented out. There was catered food, balloons with happy retirement in gold foil, and a slideshow playing grainy photos of my early work years. At first, I felt honored. People took turns giving speeches. My assistant told a funny story about how I used to label my lunch like it was state property. My old boss, now retired himself, said I'd saved more shipments than UPS tracking. There was laughter, clinking glasses, some tears from the old-timers. I felt seen. Then Brandon stood up. My son. I expected something heartfelt, maybe a joke about how I worked too much or forgot his soccer games, but always came through in the end. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Let's be honest, Mom did all the real work." The room burst into laughter. A loud, genuine laugh from nearly every table. Even the CEO let out a chuckle. My wife just gave that sweet smile of hers, the kind she gives when someone compliments her roast chicken. Brandon kept going. Seriously though, growing up, it was Mom who made sure our homework was done. Mom who kept the lights on. Dad worked hard, no doubt, but half the time we weren't even sure he lived in the house. We used to joke he was a ghost with a pension. More laughter. Cassie giggled and muttered something I couldn't hear. A few people clapped. I just sat there, frozen, glass of water in hand, wondering if I'd somehow walked into a roast instead of a retirement. Brandon continued, "But in all seriousness, thank you, Dad. You taught us the value of hard work. Even if we didn't see you much, we felt your support. Just, behind the scenes." He ended with a raised glass, and everyone toasted. I sipped politely, then sat back down. Denise leaned over, patted my arm like I was some ancient uncle who'd just had a stroke, and whispered, "Don't take it personally. He was just trying to be funny." That stung worse than the speech, because she didn't say he was wrong. I watched them all, the people I thought would remember me for the work I did, the sacrifices I made. And instead, it felt like I was being politely escorted out of relevance. A tired man who once worked a lot, but whose contributions now felt like background noise to everyone else. I smiled through it. That's what I've always done. I let the DJ play the 80s hits and thank people for coming. I cut the cake, posed for photos, and laughed when someone made a joke about me finally sleeping past 6 a.m. I even nodded when Brandon said, "You're free now, Dad. Go play some golf or something." But inside, something cracked. Not out of bitterness. Out of disappointment. A lifetime of quiet responsibility, reduced to a punchline in a rented ballroom. I sat quietly while people began to leave. The slideshow looped for the third time. My old dispatcher, Greg, gave me a pat on the back and said, "Hell of a career, Tom. Don't let him forget it." Denise was chatting with one of the HR ladies near the punch bowl. Cassie was scrolling through her phone. Brandon, already at the bar laughing with one of my coworkers, probably talking about how I used to fall asleep in the recliner with the TV on. And that's when I remembered the envelope in my coat pocket. I'd printed it out that morning, a letter I'd intended to share with the family during my speech. It wasn't flashy, just something simple, a surprise. But after Brandon's little comedy routine, I decided to hold off. Let them have their laugh first. But I couldn't leave without saying something. So I stood up, slowly, and tapped my glass with a fork. The sound rang out louder than I expected. Everyone turned, mid-conversation, mid-drink, and looked at me. I smiled. Not bitterly, just calm. "Thank you all for coming." I really appreciate it, I began. It means a lot to see so many faces I've worked with, laughed with, and fought deadlines alongside. Polite smiles. I had something I was going to announce tonight. Wasn't sure if it was the right moment. But since we're being honest, a few eyebrows raised. Denise turned toward me fully now, glass halfway to her lips. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the envelope, and held it up. Inside this envelope, I said slowly, is something I've been planning for a while now. Well, it's a little shift in the family dynamic. Something I figured I'd reveal after retirement, once I had the time to focus on what really matters. People were leaning forward now. Jokes faded into silence. Even Brandon stopped mid-sip, watching me. I let the silence linger, just enough for the weight to settle in. Then I added, but before I open this, I want you to ask yourself something. When someone gives you everything they've got, even quietly, do you see them? Or do you only remember the noise? Then I placed the envelope down on the table in front of me. There was a long pause after I sat down. It was an awkward silence. It was heavy, tense, the kind of stillness that settles before a storm. I didn't look at anyone right away. I just placed the envelope in front of me on the table like it weighed 1,000 pounds and let them sit with what I'd said. Cassie was the first to break the silence. She let out a dry little laugh and said, "Okay, seriously, Dad. What is this? Some dramatic cliffhanger? You trying to pull a Succession twist on us?" She meant it as a joke, but no one else laughed. Brandon's expression had shifted. He was gripping the back of a chair, not quite sitting, not quite standing, eyes flicking from the envelope to me like he couldn't decide whether to grab it or run from it. My wife. She just looked uncomfortable. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, like she was trying to read the contents of the envelope through the paper. I didn't move. I didn't answer. So Brandon finally spoke. "All right, what is it? Are you sick? You dropping some surprise diagnosis on us or something?" I looked up then, right at him. My son, the kid I drove to debate practice at 6 a.m. for 2 years straight, the one I helped pay rent for during his first 3 years out of college while he figured things out. The man who stood in front of all my coworkers an hour earlier and said I was basically invisible. "No," I said calmly. "I'm not sick, but I am awake now, for the first time in a while." That was when Denise stepped in. She stood up, still trying to maintain her gracious hostess smile. "Tom," she said with that gentle warning tone she'd perfected over the years. "If this is about Brandon's speech, maybe we shouldn't." "It's not about the speech," I cut in. "It's about a pattern. Years of being treated like a footnote in my own life." The room was still. Every conversation that had started to bubble up again stopped. The DJ lowered the music, sensing something was happening. "I used to think I was doing it for the family," I said, standing again. My voice wasn't angry, just firm, measured. The long nights, the missed holidays, the early mornings. I justified it all. I told myself it was so my kids wouldn't struggle, so Denise could have the life she deserved. But somewhere along the line, the people I was working so hard for stopped seeing me as a man and started seeing me as a given. I looked around the room, making eye contact with the people who mattered. My brother-in-law, who always took jabs about how I never made it past middle management. My daughter, who once said she didn't invite me to her work promotion dinner because I'd just talk about logistics. My wife, who used to write me sweet little notes in my lunch when I was 29, and now barely looked up from her phone when I walked into a room. "This envelope," I continued, "isn't a threat. It's a boundary. It's a course correction." That's when Brandon reached for it. Bold. Impatient. "Dad, stop being cryptic. What is it?" I held up a hand. "You'll find out soon enough. Everyone will. But not tonight." He scoffed. "So this is a game?" "No," I said, leveling my gaze at him. "This is clarity." He didn't like that. I could see the anger starting to bubble under his skin. He opened his mouth to say something. Maybe another joke, maybe a dig, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. Instead, I turned to the rest of the room. "I spent over 4 decades in a career where no one claps for you unless you make a mistake. I showed up every day, took care of what needed to be done, and never asked for a spotlight. And I didn't come here asking for one now. But I won't be mocked in front of the people I gave my life to. I won't be treated like a ghost in my own story." I looked at Denise, who still hadn't sat down. She had crossed her arms now, her jaw clenched. "And I certainly won't keep investing in people who only remember me when they want something." Brandon opened his mouth again, but Denise cut in this time. "Tom," she said, her voice low, urgent. You're being dramatic. You've had a long night. Maybe you should. No, I said. I've had a long life. This night. This is just the first one where I'm saying how I actually feel. Then I picked up the envelope and placed it back in my coat pocket. I'll send copies to the people who need to see it. And when it shows up in your mailbox, don't say I didn't warn you. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flip any tables. I just walked out. Quietly, calmly, past the buffet trays and the gold balloons. Past the people whispering at their tables. Past my daughter who didn't meet my eyes. And my wife who looked like she'd seen a stranger in my skin. I stepped out into the night air and exhaled. My heart was steady. My mind clear. I'd spent a lifetime building for others. And now I was finally building something for myself. What was in the envelope? Well, let's just say, it was the key to a future they never expected. And by the time they figured it out, I'd already changed the locks. The first message arrived 2 days later. It was a text from Cassie. Short, suspiciously polite. Hey Dad, just wanted to say sorry again for how Brandon's speech came out. He didn't mean it like that. Can we talk sometime this week? I stared at it for a while. I didn't reply. She never texted me first. Not for years. Not unless she needed something. A check for her car repairs, advice about taxes, or a cosigner on a loan she swore she'd pay off in just a few months. Then came the email from Brandon. Dad, can you just explain what the envelope thing was all about? You kind of freaked everyone out. If there's something serious going on, just be honest. We can handle it. Also, if there's anything you want to clear the air about, I'm free tomorrow. Clear the air? After a speech that basically erased me from my own retirement? After decades of showing up, providing, sacrificing, and quietly being the net that caught every mistake they made? No, not this time. Because here's what none of them knew yet. A month before my retirement, I'd gone to see a lawyer. Not because I was dying, not because of any drama, just because I was finally ready to take control of the pieces of my life that I'd left on autopilot. You see, all those years of working late, climbing the ladder, living modestly while my family spent freely, I wasn't just burning the candle at both ends. I was stacking candles. I never told them how much I'd quietly saved. I never corrected them when they assumed we were just getting by. I let them believe Denise handled all the finances, and she did, to a point. But I kept one account. Private. Untouched. Growing for decades. Denise didn't know about it. Neither did the kids. Not until the envelope. Inside that envelope, instructions for my lawyer. To update the trust one had drawn up, the one I originally intended to leave equally to my wife and kids. The same one I had quietly revised after years of watching their respect for me dissolve, drip by drip, into sarcasm, neglect, and empty appreciation. I had intended to surprise them that night with a plan to gift them each something generous, seed money to start something new, a vacation fund, a down payment for a house. But after the way they dismissed me, not angrily, just casually, like a tree they always assumed would stay rooted no matter how hard they leaned on it, I decided I was done giving to people who only saw me as a paycheck with a pulse. So I revised the trust. I redirected nearly all of it. Some went to a scholarship fund in my parents' names. They were immigrants who never finished school and always said education was the only inheritance they could afford to give. Some went to a charity I'd volunteered with on weekends, the one no one in my family had ever asked about. And a significant portion? I transferred it into a foundation, one I named after myself. Because why not? After all these years, I finally wanted something with my name on it that couldn't be ignored. But the part that would sting most? I left Denise the house. That was never in question. But the lake house? The one they always assumed would be a family inheritance. Sold. Closed. Papers signed the morning after the party. The buyer? A lovely retired couple from Oregon who'd lost their vacation home in a wildfire. Paid in full. Denise found out 4 days later. It was 7:42 p.m. when she called. I watched the phone ring from across the living room. I didn't answer. She called again. Then a text. Thomas, what is this? Did you sell the lake house? Without talking to me? Without talking to you. Like the years I tried to talk and you said I was just overthinking things. Like the weekends I wanted to slow down and you pushed for trips with your sister's family instead. Always more hosting, more entertaining, more smiling for people who never once asked what I wanted. So no, Denise. I didn't talk to you. The next day, she showed up at my apartment. I had moved into a small, neat place in a quiet part of town. Clean, simple, free of echoes. She stood outside the door in one of those tailored coats she always wore to look polished, even in chaos. I opened the door halfway. "Can we talk?" she said. I nodded, but I didn't step aside. "I just need to understand," she said, crossing her arms. "Why are you doing this? You're punishing the kids because of one bad speech." "This isn't about a speech," I said calmly. "It's about years of not being seen, of being taken for granted. I worked my whole life thinking one day I'd get a little gratitude. Instead, I got laughed at. And you sat there and smiled." She blinked like I'd slapped her. "Tom, that's not fair. You know they love you. They were just joking. That's how people show affection these days." "No," I said. "That's how people justify disrespect." She tried to argue, said I was blowing it out of proportion, said we were a family and that families stick together, even if they don't always show it perfectly. I listened. Really, I did. But the more she talked, the more I realized she wasn't upset about the choices I'd made. She was upset she didn't get to make them first. She wasn't shocked that I'd felt overlooked. She was shocked I finally acted on it. I finally said, "Denise, I don't hate you. I'm not doing this to get revenge. I'm doing this because I finally want to live my life on my terms. And that means giving to people who don't see me as a footnote." She didn't reply. She just looked at me, eyes flickering between anger and something that almost looked like regret. Then she left, and I let her go. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because Brandon, he didn't take things nearly as well. And when he found out what I really did, let's just say his reaction wasn't quiet. 3 days after Denise left my apartment, Brandon showed up unannounced. I was sitting at the breakfast table, coffee in hand, flipping through the business section of the paper, a habit I hadn't let go of, even in retirement, when I heard pounding on the door. Not knocking, pounding. I opened the door slowly. There he was, my son, red in the face, holding a crumpled printout. "You sold the lake house?" he barked. "Are you serious right now?" "No, hello. No, how are you?" "Just fury. The kind of fury you only get from someone who thinks something belonged to them." "Yes," I said calmly. "I sold it. Without telling any of us." "Brandon," I said, "I told you. I don't owe you an explanation for what I choose to do with what I earned." He shoved the paper at my chest. "This isn't just about the house. You left Cassie and me out of the trust? You gave everything away to some foundation." He spat the word like it was poison. I didn't flinch. "You found the paperwork, I see." "Mom showed me," he growled. "She's freaking out, by the way. She's convinced you've lost it. Midlife crisis, late-onset dementia, something." I nodded. "Of course she is." He kept going. "You know, I defended you after the party. I told people you were just tired, that you'd come around. But now it's just pathetic. You think this makes you noble? You think giving everything to strangers makes you a better person?" I set down my coffee and stepped forward, meeting his gaze. "No, Brandon, I don't think it makes me noble. I think it makes me free." He blinked, thrown off by how quiet I was. "For years," I said, "I bent over backward for this family. I worked myself into ulcers and gray hair to give you and your sister a better life. I missed birthdays, vacations, entire seasons of your childhood because I hoped, one day you'd look at me and say, 'Thanks, Dad. I see what you did for us.' But instead, at the one event meant to celebrate my life's work, you reduced me to a ghost." "It was a joke," he snapped. "No," I said. "It was the truth, disguised as a joke. And now you're angry because you're realizing that actions have consequences, even yours." He stepped back, jaw clenched. "You didn't build anything, Brandon," I continued. "You inherited. Handouts, safety nets, rent checks, cars. Every time you slipped, someone caught you. And yet, you never once thought to ask what I wanted, what I needed. You just assumed I'd always be there." He looked like he was going to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. "I'm done raising adults who never learned how to appreciate what they had. I'm done financing disrespect." He glared at me. "You're cutting your own kids out of your life. What kind of father does that?" I shrugged. "The kind who finally realized his kids stopped being family the day they started treating him like a burden." He turned and stormed down the hallway. "You'll regret this," he snapped. I didn't reply. I just closed the door. He texted me twice after that. One was a half apology, probably drafted with Denise standing over his shoulder. The other was a venomous rant about how I'd ruined the family legacy. I didn't reply to either. Cassie called once too. She tried a gentler approach, something about maybe sitting down together as a family and working through this. But when I reminded her she hadn't invited me to her law school graduation because, quote, "You just want to talk about your job," she fell silent. I haven't heard from her since. Denise, for her part, tried to challenge the trust. She had her lawyer send mine a threatening letter, claimed I was mentally unfit to make those changes. But my attorney, a sharp woman named Rosa, who's known me since I handled her father's shipping account in 1997, shut that down fast. Every signature, every date, every move I made was above board. Legal. Final. And when Denise realized she'd have to actually work with her money now, no more hidden safety nets, no more surprise deposits, she backed off. I expected to feel guilt, regret, some pang of sadness, but all I felt was quiet. Stillness. The kind you only get after years of noise. I spent the next few weeks packing up the last of my things from the old house. I didn't take much. A few books, a photo of my parents, the watch my grandfather gave me. The rest I donated. Not because I was bitter, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of a life where I wasn't seen. When word got out about the scholarship fund and my foundation, the calls started coming in. Former coworkers, old students I'd mentored, even a young man from the mailroom who told me I once gave him $500 for night classes and changed everything. They thanked me, told me I mattered. I finally heard the words I'd waited my whole life to hear from the right people. Eventually, I bought a little cabin 2 hours north. Nothing flashy, just peace. I wake up to birds instead of alarms. I cook meals for myself without rushing. I write letters, read books, and sometimes I take long walks with no destination. No one interrupts me. No one makes jokes at my expense. I have quiet now. But more importantly, I have dignity. And once, just once, I drove by the old lake house, the one Denise had always said would be for the grandkids. It had a new coat of paint. Wind chimes on the porch. I saw a family playing cards by the window. Smiles, warmth, laughter. The kind that isn't performative. The kind that doesn't hide disrespect behind humor. I sat in the car for a moment and smiled. It felt right. Not vengeful. Not cruel. Just right. Because in the end, the envelope didn't hold money. It held clarity. A line in the sand. A declaration that I was no longer available for quiet disrespect. I gave my family every chance to see me. They chose not to. So now, I choose me. And for the first time in 65 years, that's enough. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.